Welcome back to the Loudmouth MMA podcast. This is the MMA Takeover show with Keith Shillan. I am your host, Keith Shillan. We got some things we got to talk about. We are in between two big fight weeks. Last week we had the head-to-head matchup between Bellator and the UFC. Bellator going down in Inglewood, California. It's Chris Cyborg becoming a four different organization champion, Bellator, UFC, Invictor, and Strikeforce. Also, UFC Raleigh, Curtis Blades knocked out Junior Dos Santos in the main event to move closer to a title shot. He was calling for a title shot. I don't think he'll get it. We're going to get into that with our guest. Our guest this week is Patrick Auger from the Bodylock and Sherdog. We're talking about in the second segment. But before we do, I just want to talk about the UFC schedule. I mean, we're in the midst of a break, but buckle up, get ready, because it is about to get crazy in the first quarter of the year. I think there's a UFC for the next 8 weeks and something like 11 out of 12 or 12 out of 13 weeks, all the way going to May. Then of course we'll shortly after that, we hit summer, International Fight Week. There's a lot to be excited about. I talked about Chris Cyborg Between the Links. Unfortunately, for those who wondering, we did not have a recap for UFC for the UFC and the Bellator. Two recaps that I both do. I do one with John Franklin, the UFC recaps, and I do the Bellator recaps with David Bacon. The reason why, long story short, my wife was in the hospital. I'm not going to get into it. It's a personal issue, but she was in the hospital on Sunday when I normally record. It's just something I shouldn't be recording a podcast when my wife was in the hospital. For those wondering, she is okay. Just had a medical, it was a scary moment, but luckily she's okay. She will be okay. So that's why that didn't happen. I definitely wanted to cover both cards, but we'll make up to it this week with the Loudmouth MMA podcast. We'll have the breakdown show breaking down all of UFC 247. Me and John Franklin will do the All Angles show, which I believe is the most in-depth breakdown show there is. We cover the main event of UFC 247, John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. We'll cover from every angle possible. We'll give the backstory. We'll break down the skills of each fighter, and then also give our prediction, decide what we believe should be next for both fighters. And then after that, man, we just keep rolling. We got Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz going on it in Rio Rancho. That is probably a number one contenders matchup. And the winner, back to back 2 weeks in a row, we have the light heavyweight matchups. The winner of Jones Reyes will probably be facing the winner of Corey Anderson and Jan Blachowicz, unless something crazy happens, no contest, something like that. The week after that is a fight that, how could you not like this? Paul Felder going into enemy territory in New Zealand, take on Daniel Hooker in a very pivotal lightweight matchup. Probably, the winner that does move closer to a lightweight championship bout. But there's a huge line with obviously Tony Ferguson getting the first title shot. After that, it is probably Justin Gaethje. Conor McGregor obviously is a wild card. Who knows? George St. Pierre come back, whatever. But the winner of that matchup does move closer. But who knows? What about a Conor McGregor fight? Conor mentioned mentioned Paul Felder after his win. While I definitely think it is unlikely, there is a possibility that the UFC wants to do a slow climb with Conor and gets him in there with Paul Felder. That doesn't seem likely, considering Dana White's already talking about a rematch with Khabib. But, never know. The week after that, in Norfolk, Virginia, we have the title fight for the vacant flyweight title. And I love the matchup in a stylistic sense. Joseph Benavidez, Davison Figueiredo. They'll be fighting for the belt that Henry Cejudo has vacated. Henry Cejudo, of course, the flyweight and bantamweight champion. Joseph Benavidez is obviously an incredible story. This is a guy that has been so close to winning the UFC title, gets another chance, probably his last chance to ever capture the UFC title. I don't root for fighters as being a media member, but I am still human beings. Obviously, something in me that would probably take some joy in seeing Benavidez finally get the title. But Davison Figueiredo, I'm not going to give my prediction yet, but Davison Figueiredo is a scary bad dude who's peaking. The week after that, now we move into March. We have UFC 248, Las Vegas. We have Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. It's a fight that a lot of people aren't happy that Yoel's getting another crack at the title, but this is a fight Israel Adesanya wants to face. While I agree that Yoel Romero shouldn't get the title shot based on merit, and we'll talk about that. We spend lots of time talking about that with Patrick in the next Patrick Auger from Sherdog and Bodylock. We talk about that a lot in the next segment. But I want to say it's a very fun, stylistic matchup. The striking the striking finesse, speed, accuracy of Israel Adesanya, arguably the best striker in the entire UFC, against Yoel Romero, the perfect blend of athleticism, power, wrestling chops. I mean, he has it all. And, at his age, the window's closing. So like we just said about Joseph Benavidez, this is likely Yoel Romero's last chance to get a title shot. I hope he makes weight. That would be terrible. Following week, we go to Brazil. We have hometown hero Charles Oliveira, guy who's red hot. Another fun lightweight matchup. He takes on Kevin Lee, outspoken guy who, he looked phenomenal, knocking out Gregor Gillespie in his last fight. A guy that he's still a lot younger than people think, kind of coming into his own. We go international again, back-to-back weeks. March 21st. This might be my favorite fight. I don't know if it'll be the most exciting fight, but I'm just intrigued by how they match up. It's in London. We have Tyron Woodley, former welterweight champion of the world, going against Leon Rocky Edwards, who he's made that climb, slowly taking out contender. I want to see if he's ready for that step up. He's taken out Rafael dos Anjos and Gunnar Nelson, Donald Cerrone, but Tyron Woodley, even though he got smoked by Kamaru Usman's last fight, is still a big step up. And I'm intrigued by it. There's little, seems like bad blood. Tyron Woodley was on Ariel Helwani this week. He disclosed some things about, when he was a champion, he got distracted. He spent money crazy. Might not have been totally focused, but he sounds like he's focused for this fight. He's focused to try to get back on top. He's getting that hunger back, but he's got a very stiff test in Leon Edwards. And Tyron Woodley, he ended up 2019 on a wrong foot, losing to Kamaru Usman, no longer being the champion, but he would put himself right back dead center of the title picture if he can get Leon Rocky Edwards out of there. We got to move on. Unfortunately, I clicked off the schedule. I don't have it off the top of my head what is next. Hold on a second. This is not the best radio or best podcasting, but I have it back up. The next week after that, we go to Columbus, Ohio for Francis Ngannou and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That is a scary matchup. Two guys with huge power that probably be a knockout. Hopefully that'll be exciting. But the last time we mentioned about a guy having huge power against Francis Ngannou, I think it might have been that Derek Lewis fight where we expected these two big, massive men to come out and try to separate each other from consciousness, but instead we got a snoozer. Hopefully we don't get that with Ngannou and Rozenstruik. Hopefully they don't respect each other's power, too much, that it's a boring fight, that they do engage. I expect that to happen. That is a fun fight. And the winner of that fight could be looking at a title shot, especially Rozenstruik. I understand Francis Ngannou has already lost to Stipe Miocic. It wasn't a close fight. But Rozenstruik, not a guy that has fought for the title, so he could get a fast track. The week after that, UFC on Fox, UFC on ESPN Plus 30. It does not have a location next. Probably looking at a international card. There's no main event next. Some of the fights have been announced. Tristan Connolly versus Alex da Silva, Alessio Chirico versus Abu Zeta, and Julia Avila versus Calaverza. Obviously, I don't think any of those fights would be getting title shots. We don't know who. Obviously, when I say title shot, main event slot. So we don't know who will be coming up after that. The weekend after that, I apologize. I did again. I clicked off the schedule. I'm not the smartest person in the world. It's strictly the UFC schedule. Let's see if I can pull it up. After that, New York, a card I'm hoping to be at in person, covering it for Sherdog. We have Habib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. I mentioned that Tyron Woodley versus Leon Edwards was my favorite fight. I can't remember if I said besides Habib versus Tony Ferguson, that's the fight that everybody wants to see. I think that's the fight we say, what's the one fight that we want to see? It's Habib versus Tony. It's a fantastic stylistic matchup, a fight that we've been hoping to get for so long. It's been booked 4 times before, both guys pulling out 2 different times. This fight seems cursed. Let's just pray and hope that finally it goes down on April 18th in New York City. That's in Brooklyn, I believe. That's not in Madison Square Garden. Next week after that, a fight that just was announced, Lincoln, Nebraska. Anthony Smith, hometown guy from Lincoln, Nebraska, taking on Glover Teixeira, a pivotal light heavy matchup. And the last fight that was announced, we go to Sao Paulo. Ketlin Vieira versus Mariano is a top fight booked for UFC 250, though it looks like, from all reports, that Henry Cejudo will be going into Sao Paulo facing the hometown man, the legendary Jose Aldo, for the bantamweight title, a fight that a lot of people are not happy that he's getting. But he, they're not happy, but Jose Aldo is a true threat. So what I want to say is get ready for this. This is a stacked card. What I'm going to plan on doing from now on in my third segment is giving predictions for the fights. It's going to be a little different this week because we don't have a UFC or a Bellator or even any major card going down this week. We'll have that more. So what I really want to do is I want to talk about the fights, talk about the news, what's going on in the news. Second segment, bring in a guest. Third segment, make predictions. I thought about other ways to space it out. Maybe do weeks there isn't a UFC Bellator in the future. Maybe do like a top 5 countdown. Maybe find a topic with a guest to really go over. This week, me and Patrick Auger, we'll go through the weight classes and say who should get the title shot and see we'll debate. We might disagree. Me and Patrick, neither one of us are scared to back down and give our opinions. But some things that stood up in the news, obviously, I want to talk about Kobe Bryant, the death of Kobe Bryant. He is not an MMA fighter, though he did do that athletes retreat with the UFC. He's a fan of the UFC. How can you be a sports fan and not mention Kobe Bryant? I grew up, you can tell by my accent, I live in the New England area. I'm a Boston Celtics fan. Kobe Bryant broke our heart in the finals. But more importantly than athletic defeats, sports and whatnot is life, and life is precious. Kobe Bryant obviously had some dark clouds and controversy in the name, but he also did a lot of good, and some of it was, being a father, and for him and his daughter to die together. It's heartbreaking. He's young. I think he was 41 years old. Definitely thoughts and prayers go out to his family. I could imagine the hurt they're feeling. And can we just say it sucks? It sucks to see someone like that die. And of course, I don't want to be just talking about Kobe and his daughter. I believe there was 9 people on the helicopter. Thoughts and prayers for all of them. It's just, life is precious. Take some time, hug a friend, family, end a beef. I have a couple beefs out there that I probably should end and get over because life is too short to hold on. Some of the things in the news, specifically the MMA world, obviously the Joe Rogan, Stephen A. Smith's beef has been blown up. It's been blown out of proportion. I gave my take. I believe it was last week. I commented, I'm not going to comment anymore. You can go back to last week's episode. It might surprise you whose side I was on. The other thing big in the news, Rafael Lovato Jr., middleweight champion of the world for Bellator, is out indefinitely with a brain injury. I by no means am a brain expert, but sounds like he has large pockets of cells built up. I don't understand the injury, but anytime it says brain injury, you just get scared. He is not retiring. He said that he plans on fighting again, but until he gets cleared, he does not know. He needs to be cleared by a doctor. He needs to be cleared by athletic commissions. He's going to be out for a while. And I'm assuming the Bellator will vacate him. I could see Gegard Mousasi fighting somebody for a title. He just fought Lyoto Machida, so I doubt they run it back. Not to mention that fight was kind of boring. You know what? Let's have some fun. Let's pull up some middleweights. Let's just kind of see who could face Gegard Mousasi that makes sense for the in like an interim title, and maybe they just strip Lovato. They do the actual title. Rafael Cavallo, former champion, is a name that sticks out. Fabian Edwards is way too young, but that's a name. For some reason, they have Royce Gracie listed as middleweights. Obviously, Lyoto Machida just won. Chidi and Njokuani is kind of like a journeyman in the division. John Salter, former champion. John Salter won his last fight. Yeah, he did. What's it? The young kid there. Costello Vince Dinas. You know what? That's probably the matchup to get to make. Gegard Mousasi versus John Salter. I think I said John Salter's former champion. He was never a champion. He seems like a guy who should have been the champion. Yeah, I can see that fight going on. Anyways, to be honest, this is a weird episode. When there isn't events, there wasn't a lot of news this week. I don't want to talk about Stephen A. Smith. We broke that. We broke it down every way possible. And I'm kind of sick of it. I spoke on it last week. I spoke on it Between the Links. I've heard other people in the network talk about it. I'm just done with that. So, anyways, I'm gonna take a break. We're gonna be back with Patrick Auger, and what we're gonna do is we're not gonna do a third segment. We're just gonna talk to Patrick and then get out of here. All right, guys, just stay tuned. Welcome back to the MMA Takeover with Keith Shillan. I am, of course, Keith Shillan. We are in the second segment, and we're going to bring in an expert, one of the top writers in the industry. He writes for Sherdog, and he writes for Bodylock, the great Patrick Auger. Patrick, what's up, my man?
What's up? Thanks for having me. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. So let's get into it. As I said in the first segment, we're in this this rut right before the storm, like the calm before the storm. I think it's something like the next 12 weeks or something. There's either UFC or Bellator. This week we don't have any. So I'm kind of in this weird thing where do I talk about last week's? Do I talk about this one? But I want to talk about last week's. We had UFC Raleigh, Bellator going head to head. I know you're a guy who loves both organizations. You cover both. Which organization won the night? Was it UFC Raleigh or was it Bellator?
So that's a very tough question. What it really comes down to is, did you watch Bellator live or not? If you didn't watch Bellator,
yes,
you did. Okay. If you watched it live, unfortunately, I think UFC took it just because you had some long gaps of dead air. You had some great KOs, you had some great things, but you had some long stretches of just kind of, hey, we don't have anything going on here. We're going back to the desk every segment. Yeah. It killed the momentum. It really did. You had some amazing fights, and then you're just sitting there for 20 minutes being like, what am I doing?
I watched it, not necessarily this Bellator, but it pertains to this one too. I said to a friend, I spent 6 years in the Army. I spent 1.5 years in Iraq. There's nothing I think more honorable than military service. I support all military members. But I said, watching it, I said, Bellator's going to make me hate the military. Because they keep stopping and telling the sad story. And it's like, man, I want to watch a fight. Come on, let's go. Like, let's hurry up.
Yeah.
I totally understand. So you think, out of the two, you thought UFC Raleigh was better?
I thought so, again, in a live capacity. I think if you wake up the next day and you watch Bellator and you're able to skip, I think Bellator wins. They had more fights that had better action. They had, some it was an amazing show for everything that went down inside the cage.
Yeah.
But it was the problems outside the cage and the production of just, again, every 10 minutes – we're going back to the desk, and then we're just filling time, and it killed the whole vibe. But if you're looking at purely what happened in the cage, it's Bellator. But if you're looking for a show overall, UFC Raleigh kind of flowed naturally. It didn't have the most exciting fights the whole time, but still had some great knockouts, still had a bunch of great fights. So I think from a viewer's experience live, you got to go UFC, but otherwise it's Bellator.
Yeah, I went with Bellator 238 when we were asked about it on Between the Lines. I just simply went for it. The bigger name, Chris Cyborg, the fact that she went to Bellator, it's kind of damaged goods after the Amanda Nunes loss. Now, I know she recovered with the Felicia Spencer fight, a fight that I thought she did very well. I thought the Joe Rogan's narrative was way off. And I'm a Joe Rogan. It's not going to sound like it after I just defended Stephen A. Smith last week, but I'm a Joe Rogan fan. I think he's great for the sport. And obviously, when you have the number one podcast in the world, that's the guy who's your color commentary. It was good. I thought his was way off. But she went over to Bellator as damaged goods. And now the question we've been asked is, is she the GOAT? Are we putting too much stock in Amanda Nunes? Is Cyborg the GOAT? Now she has four titles and 4 different major organizations. So I think that's why Bellator, that's the star they brought in. She's the one who generated the most headlines. I think obviously Darren Caldwell in the Coleman event, Sergio Pettis, another big free agent they brought in. Everything went, even in the prelims, Aaron Pico winning, AJ Agazam, every single person other than Ava Knight, if you went down the list, who do they want to win? Their guy won or girl won. So that's why I think it worked out for Bellator. So I know this is a topic that you wrote about recently. The news that came out with Bellator recently is Steven Espinoza, the guy that, the boxing world knows him with Showtime Boxing. Obviously, if you're an MMA fan, you might know him as the guy that Conor McGregor was punking off at the Floyd Mayweather press conferences. So the big news was Bellator is going to be under the leadership of Steven Espinoza in that organization. Now, obviously, Scott Coker is still the president. I think the everyday operations will still be run by Scott Coker, but the maybe big picture. I don't really know that much about Steven Espinoza. I am not a boxing guy. I remember his little run back in the day with MMA, but tell us, because I know you followed this, what should we know about Steven Espinoza? And are you happy about the move, or does it not even matter?
I personally, I think it's a great move. Reason being, so Steven Espinoza, again, has cut his teeth and made his name in the boxing world, and rose up through the ranks in boxing to, be the head of Showtime Sports, which is massive. But he's known Scott Coker since back in the K1 days. Like, we're talking early 2000s. They've known each other forever. And Espinoza was in a huge integral part of Strikeforce getting their deal with Showtime. And Espinoza said, even when Strikeforce, kind of went defunct, multiple times said, I would love another MMA promotion here. I want to do MMA. What he wants to do, and what he's probably the best at, is marketing. That's something where he's going to be able to take a brand like Bellator and, market the hell out of it. If you look on what kind of marketing they've done on, Paramount Network or even DAZN, it's there, but it's not anything flashy. It's nothing special. It's not their flagship stuff. It's kind of like, hey, come check out these fights. But really, DAZN's all about the boxing, or Paramount Network's all about just getting you to watch the network. With Showtime now being technically in charge, I'm thinking he's going to let Scott Coker run the promotion just like they used to when they had their broadcast deal. And then he's going to, really pump up the I think there's going to be a ton of crossover action with Showtime Boxing. And I can't imagine they don't get, Michael Venom Page to fight somebody on a Showtime card or vice versa, just because it would make too much sense. But I also think that he's going to market the hell out of Bellator. It's going to be huge for them. The only real question here is that there's that deal Bellator already has with DAZN, still has several years left on it.
Yeah.
So how they're going to navigate that, I'm not sure. But I would not be surprised if you see Bellator on Showtime at some point, and especially on CBS.
Okay.
I think that's going to be their big thing, is with the Viacom-CBS merger, they're going to take it off Paramount and do a couple of big shows on CBS and kind of like prime it so that when the DAZN contract is up, they might move it over to Showtime. So that's where I see things going. I think it's great. I think it's a good move, honestly.
So obviously going to CBS, that would be a massive move. That would be a huge day. I mean, to being on network television, that is a game changer, in my opinion, to be able on CBS and have, Strikeforce was on network television and Elite XC. These guys had it, but the sport has grown. Bellator, say what you want about Bellator, it's a little more of it's a fine oiled machine at this point. They get 100 and almost going on 150 shows soon, so they kind of know what they're doing more. Showtime, going to Showtime, in my opinion, well, obviously probably better than being on Paramount, being that's a bigger name. Obviously, they know what they're doing. But the way the world is shifting with cable TV, people are cutting the cord. I don't know if going on a pay channel, I don't know what you call them, the channels like Showtime and HBO and Cinemax. I don't know what they call, but those ones you have to pay extra for. I don't know if that is the right move. I would have much rather have seen them go to a Hulu or a Netflix. So that's, to me, is where they're changing. Obviously, the zone is more sports-based, but if you could get the fans that, everybody has a Netflix account, everybody has a Hulu or whatever. If they could go that route, I would really, really like that. So what does Steven S., besides the marketing, and I mean, obviously we both agree if he gets on network TV, that's a huge, that is the foundation of building up the company. But obviously the UFC is number one. I mean, you probably get the same thing from friends asking you. They say, hey, Keith, should I watch this Bellator? What is Bellator? Is that like the B League? Are they like the feeder league? Is that the minor league for the UFC? Like, I get those questions, and I have no idea how to explain it. Because I want to say, like, no, it's not a B League. There's guys in Bellator that can beat them, but there's, like, no comparison. Like, I try to find, like, the NFL. There's no, you have the XFL, the CFL. They are below them. It's clear. But that's not the case. MLB, NHL, I'm sure there's some kind of soccer thing, but I'm not wise enough in that. So I kind of like compare it to pro wrestling, and I'm like, well, you got WF, and then you have TNA, and WF is the top one, but there is guys at TNA that used to be in WF, and they're top level guys, and they have their stars. That's the best comparison I can do. But to make it where everybody views Bellator either on the same page or the same level UFC, or to surpass the UFC, what does Steven Espo or Scott Coker, what would you say they need to do? What's some things that you would like to see happen?
So, I think the way you described it with pro wrestling is actually right on the money. I would say, especially with new pro wrestling terms, you're looking at, Cody Rhodes, famous pro wrestler, went off, started his own promotion, and now they've got a bunch of named guys, and they're trying to compete, but they're not quite, they're no WWE, but they're still something different. I feel like with Espinoza, a couple things have to happen. You mentioned Hulu. I know that Hulu has an agreement to, you can add Showtime to Hulu. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised with Hulu Live TV as they're trying to get more and more stuff if you don't end up with Bellator somehow getting, put into that mix. Other than marketing, it's really the best thing they can do, honestly, is to keep attracting, people like Chris Cyborg. You talked about damaged goods. She wiped away so much of that. And again, she's back in the GOAT conversation now after the way she handled Julia Budd. If you can pick up those type of stars that aren't, so far past their prime that it's kind of like, okay, well, they're good, but they're gone, where they actually are, still able to prove and say, oh, who knows what they could do in the UFC or so on and so forth. That's how you build it. Crossover things as well. I know people hate this idea. I am very wary of it myself, but honestly, crossover with boxing, you start getting some of their boxing names to do boxing fights with Bellator people, even on lower cards or, what have you. I feel like that is going to be a huge trend in this next decade. I, again, don't know how I feel about it for sure, but I would assume you're going to see a lot of crossover boxing matches, and I think that gets their name value out there. Because like you said, if they go to broadcast television, that in some ways elevates their level to a whole nother brand of, UFC is behind this paywall now. Like almost everything other than the prelims, other than the prelims and the occasional ESPN card, they're behind the paywall. If you, show them, if Chris Cyborg puts on the performance she did against Julia Budd on CBS, you now have a huge foundation to build everything off of. And that's what Espinoza is going to have to do. He's going to have to knock down doors. He's going to have to promote the hell out of things. He's going to have to find creative ways to get people who may not be interested in MMA and in Bellator in particular to start looking at it. And I think probably he'll use his boxing crossover experience to get that done. You might get some weird shows, kind of like you've gotten one championship or other promotions where you have like Muay Thai and MMA bouts. Wouldn't be surprised if you had some hybrid boxing and MMA bouts as well. But that's really what you got to see. Everything else is gravy. If Espinoza can get that done, then and get people signed, especially good fighters signed, then you're talking about, really elevating Bellator as a brand.
So when I talk about Bellator and improving Bellator and how to build stars or how to, make up ground on the UFC, there's kind of two philosophies. I feel like I kind of know what group you're in. There's two things. Like, sign the big names, get all the free agents, grab your Rory McDonald's, I know he's going to PFL, but that's the first name he came. Grab your Rory McDonald, grab your Chris Cyborg, Lyoto Machida, Gegard Mousasi, grab those. What they've done, and they're going to continue to do, and I've been saying it all year, I expect Anthony Pettis to be fighting in Bellator very soon. I expect maybe the entire UFC women's featherweight division to eventually fold and go to Bellator. That's that route. And then the other strategy that they've done is just find the young talent. Get out early, get them before, get the high-level wrestlers, get the high-level kickboxing, get them before, basically AJ McKee he never had an amateur career, but he basically had an amateur career under Bellator. Ed Ruth, Tyrell Fortune, these guys. I'm in the group that says that is your future. If you want to make it, you have to find your stars, be homegrown guys, an AJ McKee, Tyrell. You got to find, a Lee Malay McFarlane and make them your stars, because the what's the word I'm looking for? The shelf life of a Rory McDonald, of a Lyoto Machida, of Chris Cyborg, it's not long. And then it's going to be like a wheel where you're always trying to have to, Chris Cyborg walks out the door, then you're going to grab the next person. And it's just kind of a rotating wheel, while the stock life of an AJ McKee or these other guys is a lot longer. But also why I believe the route is to focus, try to build stars. We know where Rory McDonald is. We know what the ceiling is. I'm not saying from a talent sense, but from a marketability sense. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, this is how popular he's doing. Chris Cyborg, this is how – no, obviously the UFC best could be more popular, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
We don't know. Like, to me, MMA has always been a star-driven sport. You have to find your star. Say what you want about the UFC. There's always been that next star. I remember when people said Tito Ortiz, when he leaves, the UFC would be done. Mm-hmm. And then Chuck Liddell kind of became the face. And then the Ultimate Fighter became the face. And when the Ultimate Fighter was done, it was George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. Then it was Conor, and Ronda Rousey. They kind of, obviously Conor's still around, but Israel Adesanya. There's always the next one. That's what I feel Bellator has got to do. They got to find their star, the person that can elevate that organization all up. I think it's AJ McKee. I've been saying it forever.
Yeah.
So which are you in that group, or you sound like you're in the other group? Keep grabbing the top talent and trying to get the best fighters.
So I'm actually, I would say I'm more so in the same group as you.
Okay.
But here's the way I see it, right? Is there have been a couple of studies done on it. Paul Gift wrote a phenomenal paper about marginal revenue products, basically finding out exactly how much UFC fighters on pay-per-views based on the antitrust lawsuit things, essentially looking at those documents and finding out how much each fighter kind of generates revenue. And through some of that research and some other research that John Nash has done and some other people as well, when you look at it, what it comes down to is it's about the homegrown talent. It's finding that homegrown talent and really building them into a star. But if you don't have someone to basically that is more well-known or well-established that they can go over to push them to that level, then there's always kind of a ceiling, at least where it seems to be, right? AJ McKee, undefeated, has looked phenomenal. He's great. But, again, you've got to – unless you follow Bellator, or even if you're a casual fan and you might see it, you might think, oh, well, he's doing great, but who knows how I do in the UFC. So what you do is, in my opinion, is you grab those Roy McDonalds, you grab those, Lyoto Machidas, even younger if you can. Sergio Pettis is a great one. You bring them over where their ceiling is probably from a skill standpoint as well, and then you find young talent that can beat them. So that way, when I'm an objective fan and I'm looking over, I'm like, whoa, that dude just rolled over, Rory McDonald. Like, he must be good. Because I remember when Rory was, top 5 in the UFC, and he's still, but it's, again, like you said, a very small shelf life. You've got to take that and do that quickly, not so it appears like, oh, this guy's done, and now he's over in Bellator, and now this guy beat him. Well, hell, okay, like, it's still a big name, but it's not the same type of thing. So I think it's a combination, but I think homegrown talent is where the stars are made. It's the other, bringing in the name value fighters so that you can build those stars is how you get it done.
So you, just for example, you feel, and I actually understand exactly what you're saying, and I think you got a very strong point. Like, Conor McGregor wouldn't be as big of a star if they didn't have Jose Aldo as the established guy that he starched.
Right.
You kind of needed that, someone to get him over. Back to the pro wrestling days, Hulk Hogan had to get over the Ultimate Warrior. He had to lose to the Ultimate Warrior. Andre the Giant had to lose to Hulk. Andre the Giant had to get Hulk Hogan over, and I'm sure, I'm not a big pro wrestling guy, but down the line, someone had to get Stone Cold Steve Austin. Oh, Bret Hart got him over, or whatever. So you probably feel this way, and tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong. You'd rather see, instead of Fedor Emelianenko facing Josh Barnett, facing Roy Nelson, you want to see Fedor facing Tyrell Fortune.
Yes. Yeah. That's
you're rolling there's a risk to it. There's a risk that Fedor wins and ruins it, but the upside of beating Fedor, if you're Tyrell Fortune, or if you're AJ McKee has a star level, but you need people to believe in Pitbull.
Right.
Like, you have to get Pitbull over. Pitbull's got to be the killer. If AJ faces him in the finals, people got to think, like, this is the ultimate test. If he beats him, he's the best. He might be the best in the world. But then for him to be the best in the world, you got to have people believe that Pitbull's the best in the world, or at least up there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And I'm all for and I'm all for a Fedor or Frank Mir fight. Just to get the name, to get people to watch. Sure, you do that once, that's fine, but then you don't have Fedor then fight Matt Mitrione or all these other well-known guys. You have Fedor fight a Tyrell Fortune. You have AJ McKee. Now you have Pitbull as a 2-division champ. Now you get to the finals and AJ McKee steamrolls Pitbull. There's no doubt that's going to elevate him to a whole nother level. That's the type of building you have to do. That he has to beat the guy in order to get to the next level. He can't just be. That's what the biggest thing with Michael Venom Page is. Everyone kept saying, they said, oh, there's some buzz around this guy, but he's only crushed cans. And then he ran into some trouble. But imagine if he had knocked out Douglas Lima. Imagine how big MVP would have been.
Well, I'll say this about MVP, and a lot of people think he's just a can crusher. I mean, he beat Paul Daly. It wasn't the best performance. I was there live. It wasn't before, but he still won.
Right.
But I challenge everyone, go back to that Douglas Lima fight. I mean, Douglas Lima knocked him out, but people forget that right before that, Michael Page kind of stunned Douglas Lima.
Yeah.
And he almost got a little cocky for a second, and then he got knocked out.
Right.
I believe in Michael Page. I think he's a very, very good talent. Now, I understand your point you're saying is, but yeah, you need someone to get them over. So yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Tito Ortiz needed Ken Shamrock.
Right.
So it got him over.
Yeah.
He was building up. He was getting a star, but it was UFC 40. It was being on best damn sports show period, the face-offs. He needed Ken Shamrock, and most MMA fans, especially the hardcores at that time, knew he was washed up. Knew he hadn't fought in since he was in WF for he was coming back after like a 4-year layoff or something like that. No one, even when he left, he was kind of looking a little rusty. And then he returns against Tito Ortiz. So let's transition for a second. You just wrote, and I know I want to get you out of here, but I promise you we talk about this. Not that you asked, but I don't want you to have to look up something and then not do it. You wrote an article about, I would say the mistakes, or at least let me see what the word is. Yeah, I'd say mistake. Like the UFC is making a mistake by focusing on, you said, timing and name value. And you talked about guys getting title shots off of losses. Specifically, right now, Jose Aldo facing Henry Cejudo for the bantamweight title, and Yoel Romero facing Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title. If I'm correct, you view that as a negative. You believe Well, what? Tell me. I don't want to put words on. You tell me what you feel about this.
So I feel I feel it's a trade-off. I don't necessarily think it's a negative because of what we just talked about, right? So from a merit, I'm a merit-based guy. I want to see the best fight the best. That's just how I am. So for me, yes, as a personal fan, I'm like, yeah, not a huge fan of this. Don't really agree with, that method. But from a business standpoint, it's, again, just what we talked about. Why are you bringing in Jose Aldo to fight Henry Cejudo? It's so that if Henry Cejudo wins, it elevates him. Same with Yoel. Yoel is known as a giant monster of a man. Obviously, Adesanya wants to fight him. There's been Adesanya's biggest critics now are saying, well, I don't know about wrestling because of his one match with Marvin Vettori. This would put that kind of to bed. If he goes out there and just destroys Yoel and is able to stuff takedowns and do stuff like that, again, elevates him. But it's basically, getting that name value so that these newer stars or the champions can, continue to build themselves up. And then because of their schedule, because you're talking about, like you just said,
being in Brazil.
Yeah, but in Brazil, you got 40 we got 12 weeks in a row of events. Like, you need to schedule these things out in a way that are, it's hard. It's becoming increasingly clear that it's hard for the UFC to get the pay-per-view fights they want together based on either fighter injury or timing of people wanting to take breaks and all of that. And so it just becomes this kind of thing of, well, he's a name value guy, and he can fit in this time slot. Yeah, we're going to do it. I don't care if he has a loss. And then they'll find a way to talk it up. And, that's something they used to do this. In the article I wrote, I cited an article, it was like 22 fighters or 22 times that UFC fighters got a title shot off of a loss from like UFC 6 through UFC.
Yeah. The one that jumps out to me, right when you say this, I didn't look up the article, is going all the way back. I think it was UFC. Let me see. I'm not looking this up. UFC 53? Justin Eilers getting a title shot against Andrzejowski. And Justin Eilers got knocked out in under, I think it was a minute. He got knocked out by Paul Butella. So you had like a C-level heavyweight get knocked out by Paul Butella, another C-level heavyweight in the first minute, and getting his next fight, getting a title shot. I watched that at a place called Picasso Pizza in Warwick, Rhode Island. I was the only person I found, long story short, I found a guy who was an MMA fan. He owned a pizza place. He used to order the MMA. It definitely was illegal. There was no way he was paying like he was paying like the $40 at the time price, not the. And he had a couch, and me and him used to sit on the couch watching. We became friends. It was just me and him. That's it. And people were coming in and out, grabbing pizza, and me and him watch. I don't know. And then the place closed. But So here's my question, because I understand the Jose Aldo. I really do. And we'll get into who deserves it later, because I feel the same way. I believe it's a sport. I believe if the Carolina Panthers beat the New Orleans Saints in the NFC Championship, they deserve to go to the Super Bowl, not the New York Giants because they're in New York City and that's the biggest market, or the Chicago Bears, or insert whichever team sells the most tickets.
Right.
But I understand. The bigger name sells is the reason why Hulk Hogan always came back for WrestleMania, or The Undertaker, or whoever. I kind of see the Jose Aldo, longtime champion in Brazil, but I don't get Yoel Romero, because is he a big name? Like, does he sell? I mean, obviously he's more marketable. He's a bigger name than Jared Cannonier, but is it enough to really piss off the hardcore fans?
I would say,
how much more pay-per-view buys is Yoel Romero going against Israel Adesanya going to generate than Jared Cannonier or somebody else in the division?
Yeah, I think that one is, because I agree with what you're saying, where it's a little bit more of a head scratcher. But honestly, I think that one doesn't come down to that particular fight. I don't think it's going to sell super well. I mean, his Romero's wars with Whitaker did not sell well. He's not a big needle mover.
And Adesanya, in all fairness, Adesanya is a more marketable fighter than Robert Whitaker.
Right. Yes. And the thing is, is the reason I think the theory behind it is, and it became kind of clear when you hear White talk about, well, Adesanya wants Romero in order to silence the critics. Like, that key piece there is it's banking on the fact that Adesanya goes out there, puts on a tremendous performance, beats Yoel, and then if anyone down the line starts criticizing, well, he's never fought a real wrestler or he's never fought something like that, you can point, well, he beat Yoel Romero.
Yeah.
That's to shore up that last hole so that now he looks like a world beater and to build him on future shows and get him to the crossover level. Because that's, if you look at Conor McGregor, like, the big thing is now you had Mendez and he beat Mendez before he fought Aldo, and that kind of silenced a lot of the, like, oh, well, he came back from a wrestler, so he can handle that, and then he beat Alvarez. And so this is the promotion basically saying, okay, well, Costa is out, so we can't use him. We need somebody to fill in, and let's go ahead and pick a guy that has proven to be like a giant monster fighter and is a world-class wrestler. And if Adesanya gets past him, now all of a sudden, what are critics going to say about Adesanya? Like, what his weakness is, or, and I think it's banking on future revenue. I don't think it's going to be about 248 selling any more than Cannonier or whatever. I think it's just so that those critics are shut up and they can point to it.
Yeah, that when you mentioned about basically Adesanya asking for this fight, the two things historically that kind of jumped out to me that makes sense is when Conor fought Nate the first time, going up at 170. It didn't really make sense. Like, why at 170? He was just like, that's what Conor wants him. Conor wants to face him. He wants to put the test on, going up in weight, facing the bigger guy. And say what you want about Yoel Romero, win or lose, he's never out of a fight.
Right.
Even when he loses, it's war, fight of the year. His resume is obviously incredible. I've seen people argue that he has the best resume in the middleweight division.
Yeah.
Just from name value. I think there's more to dig than just that, but that doesn't matter. It's a strong argument. People back it up. And the other one that reminds me of is, do you remember when Chuck Liddell, when he was the guy, he beats Brady Couture, the trilogy, he fights Tito, and he's on this roll, and the title shot went to Jeremy Horn. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And why that fight, when you were talking, why that jumped out to me, is it didn't really make sense, but there was something to prove because Chuck Liddell lost to Jeremy Horn. Now, that's the only thing they sold it on. Because Jeremy Horn was fighting on the regional scene. He'd win 2, lose 1, pull up a big win, then lose. Like, he was not no one. But because he beat Chuck Liddell, and they kept selling that, like, look at, if he gets him to the ground, this is the wizard. They made him sound like he's the greatest. Jeremy Horn was very good on the ground.
Right.
But like good as in, like, Joe Lazon's good on the ground, like, not
right.
Like, he's not Ryan Hall, he's not Damian Maya, it wasn't like fight hits the ground, it's over. But they market it that way. Like, that's I remember when Jeremy Horn shoot on Chuck Liddell and he's got like a leg for a second, the whole crowd's ooh, like, as soon as if he gets him down, it's all over. So I feel like that. Not then obviously your Romero fights differently, but I mean that something to prove.
Yeah,
once he beats him, there's nothing to do. So you're viewing it completely. This has nothing to do with that with Romero, and mostly all to do with Adesanya.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, in my opinion, it's again, it comes down to schedule because Costa is hurt and out. But this is they picked him because this will help Adesanya continue his superstar rising.
Yeah,
this is going to do that. Cannonier would be a good fight and probably more deserving, but if he beats Cannonier, they're going to be like, well, okay, but still hasn't fought a wrestler. I don't know, like.
Yeah,
it's purely from the vantage point of let's get Adesanya to that next level.
Yeah, the other thing that going back to the Jeremy Horn thing is Horn was in the position because I believe Liddell just beat Randy Couture. Couture wasn't ready for the trilogy. They want him to get the fight. That's when he fights Jay Heron before they run it back. Right. Oh, no, sorry, it wasn't Jay Heron. What am I saying? I'm thinking the other light-skinned black guy. It was Mike Van Arsdale.
Oh, yeah.
Jay Heron used to coach with him. That's why I was thinking he fought Mike Van Arsdale to kind of come back. Babalu's fight was coming down the line. Tito was out with an injury, so it was like they're looking for a guy, just the right guy, the perfect guy at that time. Kind of way remote. Like, the other contender is Jared Cannonier.
Right.
Jared Cannonier, his last fight was an underdog against Jack Hermanson. Most
Right.
people really Jared Cannonier in a main event, and then Jared Cannonier was supposed to fight somebody else. Like he was going to fight
Yeah.
Whitaker, and then like was he going to get a title shot because there was nobody, and now his fight fell through. And unfortunately for Cannonier, he's not a guy that went on social media and barked and get Adesanya to get pissed off and call you out. Which I actually. Side note, I was saying this week on Between the Link, I think that's what Curtis Blades should be doing. Right now, Stephen Miocic doesn't want to fight Daniel Cormier. The next guys above you, Rosenstruck and Nagano's facing each other. Get on social media, call Miocic, make Miocic want to fight you, because right now the champions are fighting who they want,
Right.
not who should, which is the perfect transit. And one thing I also want to say this before we move on. While I don't agree with either Romero or Jose Aldo getting the fight, I think both guys is a serious threat, and both guys can win.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
I'm really excited about the Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo in his prime, and obviously different weight classes is all. But the thing about Jose Aldo is he's always been extremely tough to take down. You've seen a guy like Chad Mendes, how much he struggled with a guy who's a runner-up in the NCAA, a guy who could have won the NCAAs on a controversial call is how he lost the NCAA finals. The wrestling, they call it the anti-wrestling of Jose Aldo versus the Olympic gold medal wrestling of Henry Cejudo. I mean, that's fascinating to me. So as much as I don't think he deserves it, I'm not saying he won't win. Like, he could win. So let's do this before I know I've taken you way over. I said I was gonna, which helped me out because I didn't have that much to talk about this week. So
no worries.
Cuts up some of my time. This is what I want to do. We just said who shouldn't get the title shot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both merit-based. So let's go through the weight classes. We don't have to go big explanations. And then see if we disagree with anybody. So me and you, we're the two matchmakers. Dana White comes to us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say, I'll let you pick. You're the guest. Do you want to start the females or do you want to start with the males?
Let's start with the males and then go.
Okay. Do you want to start from the top at heavy or do you want to start at the bottom at flyweight?
Let's go bottom. We just talked about Aldo. Let's go that route.
All right. So right now, flyweight's already booked.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Benavidez. Davis and Figueiredo is already booked. Are you okay with those two? Like before, no, that just got matched up. You're okay with those two guys being the guys fighting for their?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
I 100% agree. So we'll move on. Bantamweight, Jose Aldo's the guy that get booked. They come to you instead. You're booking Henry Cejudo versus.
It's very close, but I'm going to go Aljamain. I'm going to go Aljamain Sterling.
I 100% agree with that. Tell me real quick why you picked him over, which the other guy, some people say Cody Stamann, but the other guy really is Peter Yan. Why did you go Sterling over Yan?
So I go Sterling over Yan because Sterling's, if you look at his last 4 fights, I mean, he had that brutal loss to Moraes, which, that hurt him. But his last 4 fights, he's been on a tear. And if you look at Pedro Munoz, his last win versus Yan beating Faber and Dodson, like it's good. It's comparable, but to me, Sterling's more recent body of work merits the title shot. And honestly, it's Yan has fought since we've been talking about Sterling should get the title shot, but he fought Uriah Faber, who again is a legend and a name value, but also retired and beat one guy and came back. It's not the same. So I think for me, Sterling deserves that nod.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think he's fought the better fighters. And you know what? Sometimes I just kind of feel like the guy who's been around longer deserves it. Like, he kind of paid the dues. Like, if it's a union job, he would have got it. He would have used his seniority. He would have got it. So I agree. So far, we're totally on the same page. Move up to featherweight. No, there's nobody booked. Mm-hmm. We have Alex Volkanovski, brand new champion. To me, this opens up a lot of possibilities now. If it was Max Holloway, the possibilities are very shallow. Now, with Alex Volkanovski, I don't know if I even came up with a name yet. Who would you book?
So for me, again, it's tough, but I have Holloway. I think you do the rematch simply because if you look at what Holloway did on that run, where he got the belt. He lost his last loss at featherweight before Volkanovski was McGregor. And, he just tears through. He tears through him. And just based on everything he did and the way he fought and how many times he defended the belts, I feel like he deserves the rematch. Volkanovski even said in the immediate aftermath of that post-fight presser, he was like, "Oh no, Max deserves the rematch." Now he's kind of walking it back a little bit, but yeah, it's everybody thought it should be Holloway until Korean Zombie went out there and flatlined Edgar. And I believe Korean Zombie also has a really good case for a title shot. But I think you gotta go. I think you gotta go Holloway simply because I think he deserves it, and I don't think he lost in a way that it's like, oh, it was just like he was shut down and it's over. It's one of those things. I think he could adjust and come back and make it more competitive. We'll see, but I think that's who deserves it.
Yeah, so I am actually going to disagree. Just one, I hate immediate rematches. I would like to see Holloway come back, fight one guy, get a win.
Yeah.
Then throw him back.
That's fair.
Now, that rule is going to get changed later on, and you're going to say, you're going to call me a hypocrite when we get up. Well, let's just say when we get up to the highest weight class, you're going to call me a hypocrite. So to me, the problem is there isn't someone who jumps out. The Korean Zombie obviously has a very strong argument. But you know who also does? Yair Rodriguez, who beat the Korean Zombie. So I want to give the Korean Zombie. He's got these knockout wins. He's a fan favorite. I mean, there's a market that's obviously growing. He pulls huge numbers, and obviously he's a hero in South Korea. But he lost to Yair Rodriguez. So how do you justify giving – I mean, it wasn't like he lost to Yair Rodriguez 4 years ago. It was, what, a little over a year ago? Or,
2 years ago, I think.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, it was a while, but yeah.
Recently, I didn't realize it was that long. Jesus, it doesn't feel like it. I should have realized that it wasn't in 2019 because we weren't talking about it for Fight of the Year. So I should have
realized. Yeah.
So I don't think he's ready for a title shot, but based on head-to-head, I'd have to go Yair Rodriguez getting the title shot.
I mean, I can't fault that logic. It's one of those things where, I saw Korean Zombie Yair live, and it's still, that last second KO is insane. I mean, the only argument you could make there is that, like, Zombie would have won had he hung on for 2 seconds. But he did. And so it's tough. And the other thing is Yair also hasn't. Let's see, who has he beat since then? He beat Stevens.
Which is not that good of a win. I mean, it was fun. He looked very good. I was there live in Boston. He looked very good early, but he kind of faded out a little bit. I hate that argument, by the way, because we'll get second. Because a lot of people use the same argument against Zabit, that they look great and they kind of fade out. Well, I always like to tell people, well, remember, they're scheduled to fight a 15-minute fight. They're pacing themselves at 15 minutes. Yeah, that's like looking at the guy who runs a 50-yard dash and go, oh yeah, but see how tired you were after the 50-yard dash? If you ran 300, you wouldn't have made it. Well, I'm not running 300. I would run differently. So
you're not training for a 300 fight. Exactly.
I knew I only had the third round. I only had 5 more minutes, so I could blow my load this long. I don't have to save myself for the next 2 rounds. So I hate when people argue. And not saying don't bring up the question. Not saying look, see how quick but the fact that you don't know if they can go 5 rounds because he wasn't pacing himself for 5 rounds. Right,
and Yair has already proven in the Korean Zombie fight. He didn't he didn't fade. He kept throwing.
That fight was insane how fast it was going.
Nuts. And if I'm being honest, I would love a number 1 contender fight that's a rematch between those two. I don't know if they would be down for that, but that would be if Yair goes out and beats somebody else and then they want to, let's say he goes out and beats an Ortega or something, and then they do the Holloway Volkanovski rematch, and then they need a number 1 contender. I'd love to see KZ versus Rodriguez too. I think that'd be amazing.
The other argument you can make with the Korean Zombie is if you move Korean Zombie against Alex Volk. I almost said Max Holloway because I'm so used to him being the champion,
right?
Which obviously helps your argument. The other argument, if you wanted to do the Korean Zombie, besides the marketing and all that, is then you could still leave this to beat Yair Rodriguez fight that seemed like they've been trying to make forever. So that's the other one. But then what do you do with Holloway? And I still think Holloway eventually makes it up to.
He should. Yeah, I think that's inevitable. But
let me say one more thing before we move on from this weight class. When I was in Boston, I did film for Sherdog at the open workouts. I was right next to the they had the boxing gym at what's that guy's name? Peter Welsh's gym in Boston. And I'm right next to the ring, and I'm doing video, and Dominic Reyes is up there, and obviously this guy is known for his power, known for his kicks. He's blasting it. But I did Yair Rodriguez, and the sound Yair Rodriguez was generated with his kicks. If someone asked me, would you rather get kicked by Yair Rodriguez or Dominic Reyes, 145 or 205? I'd probably say, I guess, Yair, but it is close. Yair Rodriguez's kicking power is insane. That was the thing I kept talking about all week. If you were on Boston, that's what I was talking about all week is I can't believe how hard Yair Rodriguez kicks.
Yeah, that's insane.
All right, let's move on. Lightweight, it's Khabib versus Tony Ferguson. Let's not big. Obviously, that's the fight we would have made. Next in line, I'm going to go Justin Gaethje.
Yep, I'll go Justin Gaethje as well.
All right. So no Conor jumps the line.
No.
Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah. I'm a little.
Leon Edwards.
I mean, well, honestly, I think the winner of Leon Edwards, Tyron Woodley. That to me is the one guy that jumps. I mean, the only thing is that Woodley got beat so bad by Usman.
Beat so bad. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the one problem. But I mean, Woodley again, went up there and defended the belt several times, and it's one of those things where if he goes out there and looks like a monster against Edwards, if he goes out there and beats the brakes off of Edwards, well. But yeah. I mean, Masvidal makes sense from a divisional standpoint for sure. It's
you got these guys almost getting a fight Super Bowl. Think about the amount of press was there, like that. Matters.
Yeah, that's the fight they're gonna make, and I don't have enough of an argument to say Edwards or Woodley needs to jump the line. It's nah, I couldn't, sure, but yeah, I think Masvidal is the one to make, especially since
you think about a guy like Edwards. I don't even know how many wins in a row he's had. That he's probably behind Masvidal. He's got to get through. I mean, let's say, hold on a second. How many wins in a row is?
I want to say it's 11.
11. All right, we'll just say,
we'll just say it might not be 11, but it's close to that.
He's close to double digits.
Yeah.
Imagine being close to double digits, then facing Tyron Woodley, longtime champion, beat Tyron Woodley, and then you're ready for a title shot.
Yeah.
Maybe if they don't do Conor instead, or who knows? Khabib.
That's what
George St. Pierre return. That is, oh my! If anybody has done basically the Max Holloway way of just
exactly.
It's Leon Edwards. Yeah, Leon Edwards is a problem too, man. There's a reason. There's a reason why not many people are calling his name. Let's move on. Back one thing I do want to mention about Tyron Woodley is remember we were talking about timing being the guy that wasn't the sexy pick but just the timing. Tyron Woodley was that for Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
The guy that everyone wanted. He just kind of was the guy that was there.
Yeah, he had sat on the shelf for a year and a half or something like that, and then got the shot. I was like, all right, well, yeah. There was.
He's
been out for a long time.
Remember, Stephen Thompson was the guy that everybody wanted. He had that knockout of that absolute starching of Johnny Hendricks, where he question mark kicking him and just looking amazing. That's the guy everybody wanted. It was Tyron Woodley was like, all right, let's get the Tyron Woodley over because he's been waiting for it. And then we'll get Stephen Thompson. And middleweight. So this is the one. We'll just put Paulo Costa aside because I think we both agree it would be Paulo Costa. Now, he's injured. So that's the dilemma.
Right.
Joel Romero's getting it. I'm saying basically just by process of elimination, Jared Cannonier.
Yeah. I would say based on merit, you got to go Cannonier because there's no one else. I always forget how thin middleweight really is when you look beyond the top 5 or 10. And then
it's always been a weird weight class. I mean, middleweight has never been stacked.
It appeared stacked for 1 minute when Weidman beat Silva, and then you had Rockhold, Weidman,
Machida was
Machida was looking good. Yeah. So for a very small time, it was middleweight stacked, but that's Jacare. But that was a while ago. Now it's not so much.
Even if you go back to the Anderson Silva days, when Anderson, there was a lot of times with those guys that nobody wanted to see Talis Leites to get a title shot, and even Nate Marquardt. There was go back further when when Earl Bustamante was the champion. It's always been that 205 has been the glamour division. 170 was always strong with Matt Hughes and George St. 170 has always been a very good historically good division.
Right.
Moving on, John Jones. This is a big debate one because right now it's Dominic Reyes. Corey Anderson obviously has a strong argument. Who would you have given the title shot to?
I would have given it to Reyes, just because he's undefeated and has put enough together. Whereas Anderson lost to St. Preux 2 years ago, 2.5 years.
It's back pretty much. Yeah, but
Yeah.
See, I would have went. So to me, it's actually an argument of three guys. The other guy being Jan Blachowicz. I would, being that he lost somewhat recently. It was actually early 2019.
Yeah, he lost to Santos.
Yeah. I thought it was late. I couldn't believe it was 2019. Yeah. So it comes down to Corey Anderson and Dominic Reyes. I feel the same way I felt with the Aljamain Sterling one. They both have similar. I mean, Corey Anderson's on a 4-fight winning streak. I would have gone with him, kind of like, hey, he's been doing it longer, kind of thing.
Yeah,
get it over with. And plus, to me, I truly believe it's good when the UFC has a true threat to John Jones,
right?
Which I actually believe Dominic Reyes is a true threat. But I think Dominic Reyes 6 months from now is even more of a threat than he is now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Obviously, you roll the dice, having him facing somebody else, but I would have went with Corey Anderson.
Yeah, and that's again a fair. Can't really knock that based on that division. Yeah, I wouldn't have been upset if that had happened, but he's undefeated and he's beaten enough guys. I feel like Reyes was the next. I felt like it was the right call just based on, especially the way that Jones had trouble with Santos. That to me makes me think, okay, like Reyes, maybe it's time that Reyes gets the shot, because who knows? Maybe this is a Holly Holm Rousey situation. Not in the sense that like Reyes is going to dominate him, but like that he's a real threat. So I don't know.
Think he is a real threat. I really do. I haven't broke down. I'll be getting my full opinion on Tuesday. We'll be taping all angles. I haven't decided who I'm going to pick yet. Like the people they did on what was it? Off the cuff, the guys were talking about, they went over the betting lines, and they were basically everyone saying that John Jones isn't a favorite enough, and I'm saying the opposite. I think the line should be closer. Yeah. Last one for the men's. We'll breeze through the females because we've been going really long. Steven Miocic. This is where I'm going to be a 100% hypocrite, saying I don't like immediate rematches. Yeah. But to me, he's already faced Francis Ngannou. He's already beat him, so that's why that doesn't jump out to me. Curtis Blades, the fact that he lost recently to Francis Ngannou, I'm like, well, I mean, if I don't want to give Ngannou the fight, how can I get to the guy that recently lost? Kind of leaves DC. They're both 1-1. I'm kind of factoring DC's age. You don't have much time. The window, it's closing.
Right.
They both have a win. DC was beating Stipe for the majority of the fight. He's a bigger name. I would do DC. Do you disagree?
No, I think that is the right call. Especially, again, you look at those fights. He knocks out Stipe in round 1, the first fight. Second fight, he's winning the majority of the fight, and then Stipe makes a beautiful adjustment and gets it done. But I didn't look at that second fight and be like, this is Kane versus JDS 2, where it's like, please don't do a third one, because this is just going to be, DC getting mauled. No, I looked at it as like, okay, I think DC's going to win this. Oh, wait, Stipe's pulled it out. Great. But, yeah, I think the trilogy is by far the best way to go, especially with Ngannou Rosenstruck book. Like, to me, it's a no-brainer to do DC versus Stipe 3.
All right, move on to the women's. We're going to blast through these. Weili Zhang. To me, there is 4 options. Unfortunately, Tatiana Suarez is out. She's injured.
Yeah.
That limits her. You could do Rose Namajunas. You could do the rematch with Jessica Andrade, or you can do Joanna Jędrzejczyk. To me, none of them really jump out.
Yeah.
The fact Rose Namajunas would be coming off a loss, Jessica Andrade would be coming off a loss. Joanna wouldn't be. She was the long-reigning champion. I know she's only on like a 1-fight winning streak, so it's not the sexiest pick.
Yeah.
I would just by default, kind of the same thing, right place, right time. I would go with the fight they went with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Do you agree or disagree? Yeah,
no, I think I agree, just because I would say Rose, just because again Rose was beating up Andrade and looked again like a monster, and then lost, and was like, okay, but she lost, and that's she didn't get a title shot off a loss. Whereas Joanna's the only one. Again, if Tatiana was healthy, I would say Tatiana should get it for sure. But in this case, Joanna's the only one with a win, and Andrade doesn't need a rematch. It didn't look like she needed a rematch. I think you got to go Joanna. I think it's the only logical choice. Not the sexy pick, but the right one.
Yeah. The other thing I want to mention about the Joanna fight and the Weili Zhang is Weili is in this position. She wasn't she's the person at the right timing, right place, kind of like the unsexy pick to get the title shot against Jessica Andrade. So that's why it's everyone was upset about it. We were saying, the only reason she's getting the fight is because they're in China. Well, that's sometimes right place, right time. And let's do it real quick. Flyweight. This to me is a division where they give it to who deserves it because there's nobody sexy. And I don't mean, obviously, I'm talking sexy as a name, not of the females, but nobody was calling for Jessica Eye to get a title fight, but she got it because she was winning.
Yeah.
Caitlin Chikagian got to get it because she's winning. I mean, is there any other choice?
No, it had to be Caitlin, and then I think next is probably JoJo.
Okay.
I mean, just because JoJo lost a very close split decision against who was that? I think against Chikagian. And I remember, and I remember scoring that fight for Joanne and being like, okay, fair enough. But again, but Calderwood just beat somebody else recently. It's going to be Calderwood next after Chikagian, unless they want to do Nunes Valentina 3. But that's which honestly kind of gives my hand away for who I think Amanda should probably fight next. But
okay. So to me, Amanda Nunes, I don't do that. I mean, she's got 2 wins over Shevchenko. I know it's 2 reasons why she got 2 wins. In the second fight, while it was close, people forget that the second fight was god awful.
It was awful.
Terrible fight.
It was terrible.
And sometimes I don't need a super fight, so it's not a sexy pick, but I really know Donna. She's winning. That's who I'd go with. Is there anybody else?
That's the thing. Aldana lost to 2 fights ago. She had that beautiful knockout over Vieira, but
she's already. But the thing with Amanda, it's more of she's taking it out. I mean, you go to the UFC rankings right now.
Yeah.
The number 1, Geronimo, done. Holly Holm, done. She hasn't faced Aspen Ladd, okay. She hasn't faced Juliana Pena, okay. Then that's Aldana. So it's 3, 4, 5, but 6 she's taken out. 7's coming off a loss. 8 she's taken. 8's coming off a loss. 9 Sarah McMahon just got 1 win. I mean,
yeah.
To me, it comes down to if you're going straight off, it's either Ladd, Pena, and Aldana. I'll go with the girl who's got the big knockout in her last fight.
Well, and I guess the thing I would say is Aldana or not Aldana, Pena and Ladd are gonna fight
face each other. Yeah. We're saying hypothetically going back, we wouldn't have booked it.
Yeah. And so, that's the thing. I think that's the winner of that is going to get the next title shot. But if you take that away, that's why, because of what you're saying is because she's already ran through everybody. If you're going to do a Shevchenko-Nunes fight for the 3rd time, if you're actually going to do that, which I think they probably will at some point.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you might as well do it now because you're not holding up the division. I guess my fear is, a year from now, there's going to be some worthy contenders, and then all of a sudden it's going to be oh wait, we got to stop and do Shev Nunes 3, and it's right now.
The problem is you put them against you, you're really holding up 3 divisions.
Right.
Anyway, flyweight, and don't forget women's featherweight. That's the last division we're going to do. I'm going to let you get out of here. I'm going to say we'll go with the highest ranked person at female featherweight, so we'll go to UFC rankings, and that would be Blank Space.
Yep.
So Blank Space, you disagree? Does Blank Space deserve it?
Nope. I think it's Blank Space. Again, not the sexy pick, but undefeated. Blank Space is undefeated. So, yeah.
So I told you I'd take 15 minutes. I kept you way over that. Take up the whole rest of the show. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do a third. I've always been trying to keep this show short. We didn't have that much to talk about. So, listen, we're going to close out like this. Tell people where to follow you.
Follow me at alldayoj. It's spelled like Auger, Auger. On Twitter, Instagram, not on Instagram a lot. Twitter is really where you can find me. And then you can find my stuff at Sherdog or the Bodylock. And
All right, guys, that's Patrick Auger. He's a fantastic writer. I read all stuff all the time. He's very, very informed on some of the topics that you have to dig deep on, like the Showtime deal, about pay-per-view numbers and all this stuff. He's not writing I think Smith should fight Brown. Like, that's not his opinion pieces. You get educated in his opinion pieces. Make sure you check out those. Guys, I thank you for listening to the MMA Takeover. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Patrick Auger. And we'll be back next week. Got a lot of stuff. I want to give my predictions for UFC 247 next week. And we'll have another guest. I haven't booked that yet, but make sure you check that out. And we got a lot of stuff. Make sure you follow everything on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to name them, but obviously the big ones coming up this week will be the Breakdown Show, Max and Marcel making all the predictions, and of course the All English from me and John Franklin will be covering just one fight. We're covering John Jones, Dominic Reyes. I believe it is the most in-depth breakdown there is. It's a 2-hour show on one fight. So make sure you check that out. And thanks for listening, guys.